"Run! Get out now!" screamed the little girl to the richest man in the room, her eyes wide with terror. Two men in black suits entered through the kitchen doors, their hands reaching inside their jackets. No one could have predicted how this moment would forever change their lives. We'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible life-changing stories. Thomas Parker enjoyed the quiet luxury of Bellini's, the upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Boston, where he could dine undisturbed. At 35, he had built Parker Technologies into a multi-billion-dollar empire, but success had come with a price: isolation. He cut into his filet mignon, savoring the rare meat while reviewing acquisition documents on his tablet. The restaurant hummed with muted conversations and the gentle clink of silverware against china. Thomas paid no attention to the small girl with tangled blonde hair who'd been watching him from across the room. Her faded blue dress and scuffed shoes marked her as out of place in this establishment, where entrees started at $50. "Sir, please, you need to leave the country right now." The girl's voice was urgent as she suddenly appeared beside his table, her blue eyes wide with fear. Thomas looked up, startled. "Excuse me?" "Please, mister. They're coming for you." She glanced nervously toward the kitchen. "They have guns." Before Thomas could respond, the kitchen doors swung open. Two men in black suits entered, their eyes scanning the room with practiced efficiency. When they spotted Thomas, their hands moved inside their jackets. "Down!" The girl grabbed Thomas's arm with surprising strength, pulling him to the floor just as a silent shot shattered the wine glass where his hand had been seconds before. Screams erupted as diners realized what was happening. The girl tugged at Thomas's sleeve. "This way!" She darted toward a service corridor, and Thomas, operating on pure instinct, followed her. Behind them came shouts and the sound of tables overturning. "How did you—" Thomas began, but the girl cut him off. "Fire exit! Hurry!" They burst into an alley behind the restaurant. Rain pelted down, soaking them instantly. "My car!" Thomas said, reaching for his phone. The girl shook her head violently. "No, they'll track it. We need to disappear." Thomas heard the urgency in her voice and made a split-second decision that would alter the course of both their lives forever. He grabbed her hand, and they ran into the wet darkness of Boston's back streets, the sound of sirens growing in the distance. "I'm Emma," the girl said as they ducked into a subway entrance. "Thomas Parker," he replied, his breath coming in short gasps. "How did you know?" Emma looked at him with eyes that seemed far older than her 8 years. "I just knew. I always know when bad things are going to happen." As the subway train roared into the station, Thomas realized he had just placed his life in the hands of a child who had somehow known he was in danger before he did. And that was just the beginning of the mysteries surrounding Emma Wilson. "We need to keep moving," Emma insisted as they exited the subway at a random stop. Rain continued to fall, masking their features from surveillance cameras. Thomas noticed the girl shivering in her thin dress. "Here," he said, removing his suit jacket and draping it over her small shoulders. "Emma, who are those men? Why are they after me?" She pulled the oversized jacket tighter. "I don't know who they are. I just saw them, in my head, saw them hurting you." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I get feelings sometimes. Mom says not to tell people." Thomas crouched to her level. "Your mother, she must be worried sick. We need to call her." Emma's eyes welled with tears. "Mom works at Bellini's. She's a waitress in the kitchen. She lets me sit in the break room during her shift." Her voice broke. "What if they hurt her?" Thomas felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. The shooters had come through the kitchen. "Do you have her number?" Emma recited her mother's cell number, which Thomas dialed from a payphone, leaving his smartphone off to avoid tracking. "Sarah Wilson," answered a frantic voice. "Ms. Wilson, my name is Thomas Parker. I'm with your daughter, Emma." "Emma? Oh my God, Is she okay? The police are everywhere. There was a shooting. She's safe. She saved my life, actually. Thomas glanced at Emma, who was watching a police car cruise slowly past. But we can't come back to the restaurant. Those men might still be looking for me. What men? What are you talking about? Fear sharpened Sarah's voice. I'll explain everything, but right now we need a safe place to meet. There was a pause. My apartment isn't safe if they're tracking you. Go to St. Mark's Church on Commonwealth Avenue. My friend Father Mike will let you in the side door. I'll meet you there in 30 minutes. Thomas hailed a taxi, giving the driver an address 3 blocks from the church. His mind raced with questions. Who would want him dead? Corporate rivals? His technology had disrupted several industries, or was it connected to the defense contracts his company had recently secured? You're bleeding, Emma said quietly, pointing to a tear in his shirt sleeve where a bullet had grazed him. It's just a scratch. He tried to smile reassuringly, but the reality of their situation was sinking in. Someone had just tried to assassinate him in a crowded restaurant, and his only ally was an 8-year-old girl with unexplainable intuitions. St. Mark's loomed ahead, its Gothic spire a dark silhouette against the night sky. As promised, a side door opened when they approached, revealing a balding man in clerical attire. "Father Mike?" Thomas asked. The priest nodded, ushering them inside. Sarah called. "Come to my office where it's warm." They followed him through the shadowy church to a small room lined with books. Emma immediately ran to the radiator, holding her hands over it. "Emma," Father Mike said gently, "how about some hot chocolate while we wait for your mom?" After the girl left with the priest, Thomas examined the Spartan office. Religious texts filled the shelves, except for one book that caught his eye, Precognition and Clairvoyance, the science behind the sixth sense. "She's special, isn't she?" Sarah Wilson stood in the doorway, rain dripping from her waitress uniform. Her eyes, the same startling blue as her daughter's, were fixed on Thomas with a mixture of fear and resignation. "How long has she been able to predict things?" Thomas asked. "Since she was 4, Sarah replied, lowering her voice. "The first time she woke up screaming about a fire. The next day our apartment building burned down. We weren't home because of her warning." Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. "And today, she saved me." Sarah nodded slowly. "Now tell me why someone wants you dead, Mr. Parker, and why my daughter is involved." Thomas paced Father Mike's office while Sarah sat rigidly in a wooden chair, her waitress uniform still damp from the rain. "My company, Parker Technologies, specializes in advanced AI systems," he explained. "Recently, we developed something revolutionary, an algorithm that can predict market fluctuations with unprecedented accuracy." "And that's worth killing for?" Sarah's voice was skeptical. "Billions of dollars are at stake. But there's more." Thomas lowered his voice. "We've been working on a classified government project, an AI system capable of identifying threats before they materialize." "Like Emma does," Sarah whispered. The parallel wasn't lost on Thomas. "Yes, though our system uses data patterns, not whatever Emma has." He glanced toward the door. "Has she always been able to sense danger, specifically?" Sarah tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "Not always danger. Sometimes it's small things, knowing who's calling before the phone rings, finding lost items. But the strongest feelings are always warnings." Her eyes met his, like today. The door opened and Emma entered with Father Mike, clutching a mug of hot chocolate. The priest's kind face grew serious as he assessed the tension in the room. "The church can offer sanctuary tonight," he said, "but you should consider leaving the city. I have connections at retreats upstate." Thomas nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Father. I need to make some arrangements first." When the priest left, Emma climbed onto the chair beside her mother. "The bad men won't find us here," she stated with childlike certainty. Thomas crouched before her. "Emma, Can you tell me anything else about these men? Did you see anything about why they want to hurt me?" The girl's face scrunched in concentration. "Just that they're angry. Something about a project called Cassandra." Thomas froze. Cassandra was the code name for their predictive threat assessment system, a name known only to his inner circle and their military liaisons. The name had been chosen with irony. In Greek mythology, Cassandra could predict the future, but was cursed so that no one believed her warnings. "Emma, how could you possibly know that name?" he whispered. Sarah placed a protective arm around her daughter. "Mr. Parker, Thomas, please. Thomas, then, please. I need to know what kind of danger my daughter is in." Before he could respond, Thomas's burner phone vibrated. A text from his head of security, Robert. "Office compromised. Your house watched. Trust no one. Security breach came from inside." Thomas showed Sarah the message. "We need to leave Boston tonight," he said. "Both of you." Sarah's face hardened. "We're not going anywhere until I understand what's happening." "Mom," Emma interrupted, her voice small but certain. "We have to go with Mr. Parker. I saw it." "Saw what, sweetie?" Emma's blue eyes seemed to look through rather than at them. "If we stay, the men find us by morning. If we go with Mr. Parker to the mountains." She blinked, returning to the present. "We'll be safe there." Thomas's mind raced. His family owned a secluded cabin in the Berkshires, off the grid and known to very few. Could Emma somehow have sensed this too? "I have a place," he said slowly, "in western Massachusetts, remote, defensible." Sarah looked torn between disbelief and the implicit trust she'd placed in her daughter's intuitions for years. "We have nothing. No clothes, no—" "I'll take care of everything," Thomas assured her. "Right now, safety is all that matters." A knock at the office door made them all jump. Father Mike entered with a duffel bag. "Church donations," he explained. "Clothes, toiletries, some cash. I've called for a car with a driver I trust." Thomas felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Father." "One more thing," the priest said, handing Thomas a small metal cross. "For protection." As they prepared to leave, Emma tugged at Thomas's sleeve. "There's another reason they want to hurt you," she whispered. "Something about my daddy." Thomas stared at her in confusion. "Your father? Who is he?" "I never knew him," Emma said. "Mom says he died before I was born, but in my dream, he was working for you." The cabin materialized out of the pre-dawn fog like something from another time. A sturdy two-story structure of dark logs and stone, nestled against a backdrop of towering pines. Thomas navigated the Range Rover they'd acquired in a small town along the way, its headlights illuminating a narrow path that no GPS would reveal. "Your family owns this?" Sarah asked, breaking the silence that had settled during the 3-hour drive from Boston. "My grandfather built it in the 60s, Thomas explained. "It's completely off-grid, solar power, well water, satellite internet with encrypted connection." He glanced at Emma, who had finally succumbed to sleep in the back seat. "No one knows about this place except my head of security, and I trust him with my life." Sarah's exhausted face revealed her skepticism. "You trusted someone at your company too, and look where that got us." Thomas couldn't argue with her logic. The betrayal stung. Someone close to him had sold information about Project Cassandra, including its potential to revolutionize predictive intelligence. But who? And how did Emma's cryptic comment about her father fit into all this? He parked beside the cabin and gently lifted the sleeping girl into his arms. Sarah grabbed their meager belongings and followed him up the porch steps. Inside, the cabin was surprisingly modern despite its rustic exterior. Smart home technology controlled by voice commands, high-end appliances in the kitchen, comfortable furnishings throughout. Thomas carried Emma to one of the 3 bedrooms and laid her on the bed. Sarah removed her daughter's shoes and covered her with a thick quilt. "You should get some rest too," Thomas suggested when they returned to the main room. "Take the master bedroom. I'll keep watch." "I couldn't possibly—" Please, he insisted. You've been through enough tonight. After Sarah reluctantly retired, Thomas secured the cabin, then opened his laptop. The satellite connection established, he sent an encrypted message to Robert. In position. Status report. The response came minutes later. Police investigating shooting. Media reporting attempted robbery. 2 suspects at large. Company locked down. Board members notified of your family emergency. Military liaison demanding update on Cassandra. Thomas replied, need complete employee records for anyone who worked on Cassandra in last 5 years. Priority, anyone named Wilson. While waiting for Robert's response, Thomas researched Emma's unusual abilities. The scientific literature was divided on precognition. Most dismissed it as coincidence or selective memory, while others documented cases that defied conventional explanation. Could Emma's intuitions be connected to what they were developing with Project Cassandra? The algorithm was designed to predict events based on data patterns, but what if the human mind could access something similar through different means? His research was interrupted by Emma's voice. You won't find the answers in your computer. Thomas turned to see her standing in the hallway, small and vulnerable in her oversized borrowed clothes. Yet her eyes held that unsettling wisdom that made her seem far older. What answers am I looking for, Emma? He asked gently. About why I can see things before they happen. She padded across the room and curled into an armchair. Mum took me to doctors. They said I have an overactive imagination or I'm highly intuitive, but it's more than that. I believe you, Thomas said, and realized he meant it. After what happened at the restaurant, I'd be a fool not to. Emma smiled slightly. You're the first grown-up besides Mum who hasn't looked at me like I'm crazy. I work with technology that tries to do what you can do naturally, Thomas explained. Predict things before they happen. Her eyes widened. Is that why the bad men want to hurt you? Because of your prediction machine? It seems likely. Thomas hesitated, then asked, Emma, what did you mean about your father working for me? The girl's face clouded. I don't know much. Mom doesn't like talking about him. She just says he was brilliant and that he died in an accident before I was born. Do you know his name? Emma shook her head. Mom packed away all his pictures when I was little. She gets sad when I ask questions. Sure. A ping from Thomas's laptop indicated a new message from Robert. The file was massive. Complete employment records for everyone who had worked on Project Cassandra since its inception. Thomas opened it eagerly, but his hope faded as he scanned the results. No employees with the last name Wilson. He might not have used our last name, Emma said, as if reading his thoughts. Mom said they weren't married. Thomas was about to respond when his laptop pinged again. This message contained a single image, a surveillance photo showing a black sedan parked near the Boston church they'd fled hours ago. The timestamp was current. They're still looking for us, he murmured. Emma's small hand covered his. But they won't find us here, she said with quiet confidence. Not yet, anyway. Not yet? Thomas repeated, alarmed. Emma's eyes took on that distant look. We're safe for now, but soon you'll have to make a choice, and everything depends on you making the right one. Dawn broke over the Berkshires, painting the forest in hazy gold. Sarah found Thomas at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups, his eyes red-rimmed from a sleepless night. Did you find anything? She asked, pouring herself coffee. Thomas rubbed his face. Nothing under Wilson, but if you could give me his real name. Sarah tensed. Why are you so fixated on Emma's father? Because Emma mentioned him in connection with my company and the people trying to kill me. That can't be coincidence. Sarah sank into a chair, conflict evident on her face. His name was David Chen, brilliant mathematician and computer scientist. Her voice softened with old pain. We met at MIT when I was working on my master's in linguistics. I dropped out when I got pregnant with Emma. Thomas typed rapidly, searching the employee database. Chen. His fingers stilled. I found him. David Chen was hired as a consultant for our AI division 6 years ago. He looked up, shocked. He worked directly on early algorithms that eventually became Project Cassandra. What? Sarah moved to look over his shoulder. According to this, he was developing predictive models based on pattern recognition in seemingly random data. His theory was revolutionary, that certain events create ripple effects that can be detected mathematically before the event itself occurs. Like throwing a stone in water, Sarah murmured. The ripples reach the shore before the sound of the splash. Exactly. Thomas scrolled through David's file. He was making incredible progress then. He resigned suddenly. 3 months later, he died in a car accident. He turned to Sarah. That timing doesn't strike you as suspicious? Sarah's face had gone pale. David's accident happened late at night on a deserted road. His car went off a cliff. Police said he fell asleep at the wheel, but she swallowed hard. He never drove recklessly. And the night before, he called me, sounding paranoid, said he'd discovered something that powerful people would kill for. Did he tell you what it was? She shook her head. He wanted to meet in person. That's the last time I spoke to him. Thomas fell silent, processing this information. Sarah, I think David may have discovered something in his work for my company. Something so valuable that someone had him killed for it. And now they're after me because the project is nearing completion. But what does Emma have to do with any of this? Before Thomas could answer, his secure phone buzzed. Robert again. Traced leak to Marvin Jenkins, VP of Government Relations. He's working with a private military contractor called Black River Solutions. Their CEO arrived in Boston last night. Jenkins, Thomas muttered. I never trusted him. Too eager to push the military applications of Cassandra. Sarah looked confused. Who's Jenkins? A senior executive who's apparently been selling company secrets. Thomas's face hardened. And possibly the man who ordered David's death. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. The man with the silver hair, she said matter-of-factly. He's the one who gives orders to the men in black. Thomas and Sarah exchanged alarmed glances. Emma, how do you know what Jenkins looks like? Thomas asked carefully. I see him in my dreams sometimes. He's always angry, always talking about the asset. The asset, Sarah repeated. Thomas's mind raced. In intelligence terminology, an asset could be a person with valuable skills or knowledge. Emma, have you ever heard them mention what this asset is? The girl nodded slowly. They talk about the primary asset and the secondary asset. The primary one is some kind of program or machine. The secondary one, her voice faltered. The secondary one is me. Sarah gasped, instinctively moving to embrace her daughter. That's impossible. How would they even know about Emma? Thomas was putting the pieces together, and the picture emerging chilled him to the bone. If David discovered something revolutionary while working on precognitive algorithms, and if Emma shows natural abilities in the same area, you think her abilities are why they killed David? Sarah whispered. That they somehow knew about Emma. I think David may have recognized something in Emma. Perhaps her abilities manifested even earlier than you realized. If he was incorporating that knowledge into his research, then Emma would be living proof that their predictive technology works, Sarah finished, horror dawning on her face. Thomas nodded grimly. And if Black River wants to weaponize Cassandra, having a human prototype would be invaluable for their research. They can't have her, Sarah declared, pulling Emma closer. No, they can't, Thomas agreed. But we need to understand what we're dealing with. Emma, can you tell us more about your dreams, about what you see? The girl looked between them, seeming both relieved to finally talk openly about her experiences and frightened by their implications. Sometimes it's like watching TV. I see things happening before they do. Other times it's just feelings, like knowing a storm is coming when the sky is still clear. And the restaurant. How did you know about the men? I saw it 3 nights ago in my sleep. I saw you sitting there, and the men coming in. I told Mom we had to go to that restaurant, but I didn't tell her why. Sarah looked stricken. Emma, you deliberately put yourself in danger? I had to save him, Mom, Emma said with simple conviction. He's going to help us stop the bad men. That's why Daddy sent the dreams. What do you mean, Daddy sent the dreams? Thomas asked, his voice gentle but insistent. Emma looked down, suddenly shy. Sometimes, when I dream about future things, Daddy is there, not really there, but like guiding me, showing me things. She glanced up at her mother. I never told you because I didn't want to make you sad. Sarah wiped away tears. Oh, Emma. Thomas's mind was racing. Could Emma's abilities be some form of inherited talent? Or had David's research somehow affected his unborn child? Either way, the connection between Emma's precognitive abilities and Project Cassandra couldn't be ignored. I need to get back to my company, Thomas said decisively. The Cassandra prototype is stored on a secure server. If I can extract it and the research data, we might find answers about Emma's abilities and evidence of what Jenkins and Black River are planning. That's too dangerous, Sarah protested. They'll be watching your office. Which is why I won't go to the office. Thomas pulled out his phone. Robert can bring a secure terminal here. We can access the server remotely. While Thomas made arrangements with his head of security, Sarah took Emma to explore the cabin's surroundings, staying within sight, but giving the girl a chance to breathe fresh air after their harrowing night. Thomas watched them through the window, the protective mother and the extraordinary child whose existence challenged everything he thought he knew about human potential. In just 24 hours, his life had been upended, yet he felt more purposeful than he had in years. Robert arrived by helicopter that afternoon, landing in a clearing half a mile from the cabin. He came alone, carrying equipment and supplies. The situation's deteriorating, Robert reported as they unloaded. Jenkins is telling the board you had a mental breakdown. Black River's CEO, a man named Victor Crane, met with 3 of your directors this morning. A hostile takeover, Thomas muttered, with Cassandra as the prize. Exactly, and there's more. I did some digging on David Chen's accident. The police report is full of inconsistencies. Brake lines were cut, but it was ruled an accident anyway. The investigating officer retired to Florida 1 month later with a brand new beach house. Black River, Thomas growled. Most likely, they've been trying to acquire military AI technology for years. Your company's breakthrough must have been too tempting. They carried the equipment to the cabin, where Robert set up a secure terminal. With special access codes, Thomas bypassed normal security protocols and connected directly to the Cassandra server. I'm going to download everything, the algorithm, test results, David's original research notes, everything, Thomas explained to Sarah as his fingers flew over the keyboard. Emma watched the screen with unusual interest. That looks like the patterns in my head, she said suddenly, pointing to a visualization of Cassandra's predictive model, a complex, flowing network of interconnected nodes. Thomas stared at her, then back at the screen. Emma, you can understand this? She nodded. It's like when I'm trying to see something that hasn't happened yet. All the possibilities flowing together until the right one gets brighter than the others. Robert looked bewildered, but Thomas was having an epiphany. That's exactly what Cassandra does. It processes countless variables until probability patterns emerge. He turned to Sarah. Emma isn't just having premonitions. She's naturally processing information the way our most advanced AI does. But how is that possible? Sarah whispered. Before Thomas could theorize further, a security alert flashed on the screen. Someone's tracking our connection, he warned, typing frantically to mask their location. Too late, Robert said grimly, checking his phone. Perimeter sensors just picked up vehicles approaching from the access road. 3 SUVs, moving fast. Black River, Thomas confirmed, closing the laptop. They must have been monitoring the server. We need to go now, Robert insisted. The helicopter's fueled and ready. Thomas hurriedly packed the laptop and hard drives containing the downloaded data. Sarah, Emma, grab only what you need. As they prepared to flee, Emma suddenly froze, her eyes unfocused. Wait, she said, something's wrong. What is it, sweetie? Sarah asked anxiously. The helicopter. Emma's voice trembled. If we take it, there will be a crash. I can see it. Robert looked skeptical, but Thomas didn't hesitate. Then we go by land. Robert, is the emergency ATV still in the storage shed? Yes, but it only seats 3. You take Sarah and Emma, Thomas instructed. I'll create a diversion with the Range Rover. Lead them in the opposite direction. No! Both Sarah and Emma protested simultaneously. Thomas, they'll kill you, Sarah argued. We need to stay together, Emma insisted. In my dreams, we're always together when we're safe. The sound of vehicles growing closer forced an immediate decision. Thomas looked at Robert, who had been his loyal security chief for 7 years. What's your assessment? Robert's professional demeanor gave way to grim determination. There's a service tunnel, part of an old mining operation. It runs under the mountain and emerges near a fire road on the other side. It's narrow, but the ATV will fit. We could all go. The tunnel isn't on any maps? Thomas confirmed. No. My father worked these mines in the 70s. That tunnel was abandoned due to safety concerns, never documented. I explored it as a teenager. Thomas nodded decisively. Lead the way. As they hurried toward the shed housing the ATV, Emma tugged at Thomas's hand. Mr. Parker, she whispered, there's something else I saw, about my dad. What about him, Emma? Her blue eyes locked with his. He didn't just work for your company. Before I was born, he was your roommate in college. You were best friends, but you had a falling out. That's why you didn't recognize his name right away. You've been trying to forget him. Thomas stopped in his tracks, memories crashing over him like a tidal wave. David Chen, his brilliant roommate at MIT, their late-night coding sessions, their shared dreams of changing the world through technology. The bitter argument that ended their friendship, David accusing Thomas of stealing his ideas, Thomas denying it, but deep down knowing there was some truth to the accusation. How could you possibly know that? He whispered. Emma's answer was cut short by the sound of helicopters approaching in the distance. Robert urged them toward the shed with renewed urgency. As they disappeared into the forest, Thomas glanced back at the cabin, a sanctuary turned trap. Whatever secrets Emma possessed, whatever connection she had to David and to Thomas's past, one thing was clear: the girl's extraordinary abilities were the key to everything. And he would do whatever it took to protect her from those who would exploit her gifts. Behind them, the first Black River operatives emerged from the trees, weapons D. The abandoned mine tunnel was a testimony to human ambition and nature's resilience. Decades of disuse had left the walls slick with moisture, wooden support beams sagging under the weight of time. Robert led the way, navigating the darkness with a powerful flashlight, while Thomas carried Emma on his back, Sarah close behind. "How much farther?" Thomas whispered, ducking beneath a low-hanging rock formation. "A half-mile, give or take," Robert replied, his voice echoing slightly. "The tunnel widens ahead, then we'll reach the old equipment chamber where we can use the ATV." Emma's arms tightened around Thomas's neck. "They're in the cabin now," she murmured. "The man with silver hair is very angry." Thomas didn't question how she knew. After everything that had happened, Emma's abilities seemed less a mystery and more a fact to be accepted, like gravity or the speed of light. What mattered now was understanding them. "Emma," he said carefully, "you mentioned your father and me being roommates. How did you know that? I see things sometimes." Not just future things, but past things too, especially when I touch people. Her small hand pressed against his shoulder. When I first saw you at the restaurant, I knew you and Daddy were friends once. Sarah spoke from behind them. Thomas, is it true? You knew David. He nodded, though she couldn't see it in the darkness. David Chen was my roommate at MIT, brilliant mathematician, always seeing patterns where others saw chaos. The memories flooded back, late nights coding, ambitious dreams, the bitter falling out. We had a disagreement over intellectual property, a concept I later developed into my first successful algorithm. Did you steal his work? Sarah's voice was sharp. No, not exactly. Thomas sighed. His concept was theoretical. I saw practical applications he didn't. I offered him partnership. He refused, accused me of betrayal. We never spoke again. The silence that followed was broken only by their footsteps and the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. Then Emma spoke, her voice small but clear. Daddy forgave you. That's why he sent me to save you. Before Thomas could process this extraordinary statement, Robert raised his hand, signaling them to stop. Listen, he whispered. Distant voices echoed through the tunnel behind them. Black River operatives had found the entrance. Run, Robert ordered, abandoning stealth for speed. They sprinted through the widening passage until they reached the chamber Robert had mentioned, a cavernous space where mining equipment had once been stored and maintained. The promised ATV sat in the center, covered with a tarp that Robert quickly removed. It's old but reliable, he said, checking the fuel gauge. It'll get us to the fire road. From there, we have options. As Robert prepared the vehicle, Thomas connected his satellite phone, sending a secure message to his most trusted board member, explaining the situation with Jenkins and requesting an emergency meeting. If they could present the evidence of corporate espionage and attempted murder, they might turn the tables on Black River. Emma tugged at Thomas's sleeve. Mr. Parker, I need to tell you something important, she whispered. About Cassandra. And why it's special. What is it, Emma? The program doesn't just predict things based on patterns. It learns from itself, like a brain growing. Daddy figured that out. That's why the bad people wanted his research. Thomas stared at her. Self-improving AI was the holy grail of computational research, theoretical but never successfully implemented. How do you know this? Because my brain does the same thing, Emma replied simply. Each time I see something before it happens, I get better at it. Daddy realized that when I was a baby. The revelation hit Thomas like a physical blow. If David had discovered the key to self-evolving predictive intelligence, and if Emma somehow possessed the same capability naturally. We're ready, Robert announced, interrupting Thomas's thoughts. Let's move. They climbed onto the ATV, Robert driving, Thomas behind him, with Sarah and Emma secured between them. The engine roared to life, echoing through the chamber, just as flashlight beams appeared in the tunnel behind them. Hold on! Robert gunned the accelerator, propelling them toward the exit tunnel as the first shots rang out, bullets ricocheting off rock walls. Emma screamed, burying her face against her mother's back as they careened through the narrow passage. Thomas glanced behind them to see dark figures in pursuit, closing the distance with alarming speed. Faster! He shouted over the engine's roar. Can't, Robert replied grimly. Tunnel gets narrower before it widens. Have to slow down or we'll crash. As the ATV decelerated, Emma suddenly twisted in her mother's arms. Stop! She cried. Stop now! Robert hesitated, then slammed the brakes. The ATV skidded to a halt just as a massive crack split the air and the tunnel ahead collapsed in a thunderous avalanche of rock and timber. My God, Sarah breathed, clutching Emma tighter. We would have been crushed. Behind them, their pursuers were momentarily visible before ducking for cover as dust billowed through the passage. When it cleared, Thomas could see them regrouping, communicating via hand signals. They're going to rush us, Robert warned, reaching for his weapon. No, Emma said with eerie calmness. They won't follow us anymore, not through here. As if on cue, a second collapse began, this one between them and their pursuers, sealing the passage completely. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence, yet Thomas couldn't fathom how even Emma's abilities could trigger a cave-in. Did you? He began, but couldn't finish the question. Emma looked up at him, dust covering her small face. I didn't do it, she said. Daddy did. Dawn painted the mountains gold as the ATV emerged from the old mining tunnel onto the fire road. They had escaped the immediate danger, but Thomas knew Black River would regroup quickly. They needed a safe place to regroup and analyze the data he'd extracted from Cassandra's servers. My brother has a hunting cabin about 20 miles north, Robert suggested. It's basic but secure. Solar power, satellite phone. No one would connect it to me or you. Thomas nodded, his mind still processing Emma's words in the tunnel. Had it truly been coincidence, the tunnel collapsing at that exact moment? Or was there some explanation that science couldn't yet comprehend? They reached Robert's brother's cabin by mid-morning, a simple one-room structure with a wood stove, kitchenette, and 2 sets of bunk beds. While Robert secured the perimeter, Thomas set up the laptop and began examining the Cassandra files. Sarah made coffee using supplies from the emergency kit, then settled beside Emma on one of the lower bunks. The girl had been quiet since the tunnel, her small face drawn with exhaustion. You should rest, Sarah told her daughter, stroking her hair. Can't, Emma murmured. Too many pictures in my head. Thomas glanced up from his work. What kind of pictures, Emma? Numbers, patterns, like the ones on your computer, but moving, changing. She pressed her palms against her temples. It's loud. Alarmed, Sarah put an arm around her. Is she having some kind of episode? Thomas moved to kneel before Emma. I think she's responding to the Cassandra data. Somehow her mind is processing it. He reached for his tablet. Emma, can you tell me what you see if I show you this? He displayed a complex neural network diagram, one of Cassandra's core predictive models. Emma stared at it, then reached out to trace the connections with her finger. It's wrong, she said simply. This part should connect here, not there. She manipulated the diagram, rearranging connections with intuitive ease. Thomas watched in astonishment as she transformed the algorithm into something both simpler and more elegant. How do you know this? Emma shrugged. It just makes sense this way. The patterns flow better. Robert returned from his perimeter check in time to witness this exchange. What's happening? I think, Thomas said slowly, we're seeing what David discovered. Why Black River wants Emma so badly. She doesn't just have precognitive abilities. She intuitively understands predictive algorithms at a level beyond our most advanced systems. Is that even possible? Sarah asked. Theoretically, no, but here she is. Thomas turned back to Emma. Your father was working on a new kind of AI, one that could learn from itself, evolve its own predictive capabilities. I think he recognized something similar happening in your developing brain. So, what does Black River want? Robert asked. To study her. Thomas's expression darkened. Worse, I think they want to use her as a template to reverse engineer her cognitive processes into Cassandra, to create the ultimate predictive weapon. Sarah pulled Emma closer. That's monstrous. It's also impossible, Thomas said. The human brain can't be mapped that way, not completely. But they'll try, which means they'll stop at nothing to capture her. Emma looked up, her blue eyes troubled. The silver-haired man is already looking for us. He has helicopters. As if summoned by her words, the distant thrum of rotors echoed across the mountainside. Robert moved swiftly to the window. Black River uses former special forces. They'll have thermal imaging, possibly drones. We need to move. No, Emma said with unexpected firmness. If we leave now, they'll see us. We have to wait. D. The adults exchanged glances, the same question in all their minds. Trust the intuition of an 8-year-old girl or rely on Robert's professional security experience? How long? Thomas finally asked her. 27 minutes, Emma replied without hesitation. They'll search the north side first, then move east. We should go south when they're facing away. Robert raised an eyebrow but checked his watch. That's specific. She's never been wrong, Sarah said quietly. Thomas made a decision. We wait, but we prepare to move. Robert, what's our best route south? There's a ravine about half a mile from here. If we follow it down, we'll reach Highway 23. I have a contact in the next town who can provide transportation, no questions asked. While Robert outlined the plan, Thomas continued examining the Cassandra data, looking for anything that might explain David's research into self-evolving AI and its connection to Emma's abilities. Sarah joined him, her linguistic background providing unexpected insight into pattern recognition. Look at this, she said, pointing to a section of code. David was using language acquisition models as a framework for predictive learning. Children don't just memorize language, they intuit rules and patterns, then apply them to new situations. Thomas saw it immediately. He wasn't just building a predictive algorithm, he was trying to create one that learns like a human child, through observation, pattern recognition, and intuitive leaps. And somehow, Emma's brain developed along those same lines, but naturally, Sarah whispered, glancing at her daughter who sat by the window, quietly counting down the minutes until their escape. Which means, Thomas concluded, she's not just valuable because of what she can do, she's living proof that David's theoretical approach works. She's the prototype Black River wants to replicate. Emma turned from the window. It's time to go, she announced. They're looking the other way now. Robert checked his watch again, eyebrows rising in silent amazement. Exactly 27 minutes had passed. They moved like shadows through the dense forest, following the ravine southward as helicopter rotors faded in the distance. Emma led with uncanny confidence, choosing paths that kept them hidden beneath the canopy of pine trees. Robert brought up the rear, erasing signs of their passage. She navigates like she has GPS in her head, he muttered to Thomas. Maybe she does, in a way, Thomas replied. If she's processing information like Cassandra, she could be calculating probabilities for each potential route. The ravine deepened as they progressed, becoming a small canyon with a stream running along its floor. They followed the water until Emma suddenly stopped, head tilting as though listening to something beyond human hearing. Something's wrong, she whispered. We need to hide. Without questioning, Robert led them to a rocky overhang, partially concealed by a fallen tree. They crouched behind it just as the distinctive whine of ATV engines echoed through the canyon. Ground teams, Robert whispered. They're herding us. Thomas pulled out his satellite phone, checking for signals from his allies at Parker Technologies. A message had come through. Emergency board meeting called, Jenkins making his move. Need you to authenticate remotely with biometrics to block him. I need to access the company's secure server, Thomas whispered. Jenkins is trying to take control. Now, Sarah hissed incredulously. If he succeeds, he'll have legal authority over all my technologies, including Cassandra. I can block him, but I need connection to the secure server. Robert pointed toward the distant highway. Cell coverage should be stronger near the road. We'll be exposed, Sarah protested. We don't have a choice, Thomas replied. If Jenkins takes control, Black River gets everything they want without us. They waited until the ATV patrols passed, then continued toward the highway with greater urgency. When they reached the edge of the forest, Highway 23 stretched before them, a ribbon of asphalt winding through the mountain landscape. Robert's contact is 3 miles east, Thomas said, consulting the map. We follow the tree line, stay out of sight until we reach the town. As they moved along the forest edge, Thomas's phone received the authentication protocol from his company's server. He quickly completed the biometric verification, temporarily blocking Jenkins's takeover attempt, but the digital footprint of his connection had consequences. "Thomas!" Robert's urgent whisper came from the rear. "Vehicle approaching, moving slow, searching pattern." A black SUV crawled along the highway, two men scanning the roadside with binoculars. Black River had triangulated Thomas's satellite connection. "Into the trees," Robert ordered. "Now!" They retreated into the forest, but the SUV accelerated, pulling off the road at the nearest access point. Car doors slammed as armed men began pursuing on foot. "Run!" Thomas grabbed Emma's hand as they fled deeper into the woods, but the girl suddenly yanked free, stopping in her tracks. "Emma!" Sarah cried. "What are you doing?" "This way," Emma insisted, pointing toward a dense thicket. "Trust me." Against all tactical logic, they followed her into what appeared to be an impassable wall of vegetation. Emma pushed through confidently, revealing a narrow game trail hidden from view. The path led to a small clearing where an abandoned ranger station stood, its windows boarded, roof partially collapsed. "How did you know this was here?" Robert asked, scanning the structure for threats. "Daddy showed me," Emma replied simply. Inside, the station was dusty but intact enough to provide temporary shelter. Robert secured the entrance while Thomas tried to assess their situation. "They're closing in from multiple directions," he said grimly. "Robert's contact is still miles away. We need a new plan." Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed in concentration. "The silver-haired man is coming himself now. He's in one of the helicopters." "Jenkins," Thomas confirmed. "He must be desperate if he's joining the hunt personally." "He wants to talk to you," Emma continued, eyes still closed. "He thinks you'll make a deal to save yourself." Thomas knelt beside her. "Emma, can you see what he's planning?" She nodded slowly. "He doesn't want to hurt me. He wants to study me. Like a science project." Her eyes opened, filled with tears. "He thinks I can make his machine perfect." Sarah wrapped protective arms around her daughter. "We won't let that happen." Thomas exchanged glances with Robert, both men silently acknowledging the gravity of their situation. Surrounded, outnumbered, with limited options for escape. "Maybe I should talk to Jenkins," Thomas suggested. "Buy us time." "No!" Emma's voice was sharp with fear. "If you meet him, everything changes. Bad things happen." "What kind of bad things?" Robert asked gently. Emma's eyes unfocused slightly. "Blood. Lots of blood." She looked directly at Thomas. "You have to trust the program." "What program?" Thomas asked, confused. "The one Daddy left for you," Emma replied. "It's hidden in Cassandra, a back door. He knew someday you'd need it." Thomas stared at her, then turned to his laptop with renewed purpose. If David had indeed built a secret protocol into Cassandra's framework, one that even Jenkins didn't know about, it might be their only advantage. As he searched through the code, the sound of helicopters grew louder, circling the area. Through gaps in the roof, they could see 3 Black River choppers converging on their position. "Whatever you're looking for," Robert said tensely, "find it fast." Thomas's fingers flew across the keyboard, searching for any signature that might indicate David's hidden protocol. Sarah watched anxiously, one arm around Emma, the other helping Thomas scan the code. "There," she suddenly pointed. "That linguistic pattern, it's not standard coding syntax, it looks like." "A poem," Thomas finished, recognizing the structure. "An Emily Dickinson poem we both loved in college. Hope is the thing with feathers." He entered the poem's first line as a command key, and the screen transformed, revealing a hidden interface within Cassandra's architecture, David's back door. "My God," Thomas breathed. He built a ghost protocol, a way to control Cassandra remotely, override any operator. The outside, the helicopters landed, and the sound of men deploying filled the air. They had minutes, perhaps seconds, before Black River found them. "What do we do with it?" Sarah asked urgently. Thomas looked at Emma, whose eyes were now calm and knowing. "We trust the program," he said, just like Emma said. "Surrender now, Parker." Jenkins's voice boomed through a megaphone outside the ranger station. "You're surrounded. There's nowhere left to run." Inside, Thomas activated David's ghost protocol, giving him direct access to Cassandra's core functions. The interface was elegant in its simplicity, a testament to David's genius. "What exactly are you planning to do?" Robert asked, positioned by the door with his weapon ready. "David built Cassandra with a failsafe," Thomas explained, working quickly. "A way to prevent it from being weaponized. I'm going to trigger it." "And that helps us how?" Sarah demanded, holding Emma close. "Black River wants Cassandra and Emma because together they represent the perfect predictive weapon. But if Cassandra's military functionality is permanently disabled, they'd still want Emma," Sarah pointed out. "Not if everyone knows about her," Thomas countered. "Black River operates in shadows. They can't abduct a child who's become front-page news." Thomas's fingers danced across the keyboard, executing David's protocol while simultaneously preparing a data package. Evidence of Black River's corporate espionage, attempted murder, and their plans for Emma, all ready to send to every major news outlet and federal agency. "Parker," Jenkins called again, "send out the girl and we'll let the rest of you live. That's my final offer." 2 minutes, Thomas muttered. "I need 2 more minutes to complete the upload." Robert checked his ammunition. "I'll buy you time." Before anyone could stop him, he slipped out a back window. Seconds later, gunfire erupted from the far side of the clearing, Robert creating a diversion. Black River operatives returned fire, their attention momentarily divided. "It's working," Thomas said as the upload progress bar advanced. 60 more seconds." Emma suddenly stiffened. "No," she whispered, "something's changing. The pictures are different now." "What pictures, Emma?" Sarah asked urgently. "The future pictures. They're changing fast." The girl closed her eyes in concentration. "Mr. Parker needs to stop. Right now." Thomas hesitated, fingers poised over the keyboard. "Emma, if I don't finish this, Black River wins. They get Cassandra, and they'll never stop hunting you." "If you do finish it," Emma countered with unexpected maturity, "something worse happens. I can see it." She opened her eyes. "You have to trust me." Thomas looked from Emma to the laptop, where the upload was nearing completion. Everything in his logical mind urged him to finish. It was their only leverage against Black River's overwhelming force. Yet Emma's abilities had proven flawless. Her warnings had saved them repeatedly if she foresaw danger in his plan. With a silent prayer, Thomas cancelled the upload and closed the laptop. The gunfire outside intensified. Through a crack in the wall, Thomas could see Robert taking cover behind a fallen tree, surrounded by advancing Black River operatives. Jenkins stood by one of the helicopters, directing the assault with cold efficiency. "We need a new plan," Thomas said, "and fast." Emma approached him with calm purpose. "I need your phone," she said, holding out her small hand. Thomas gave her the satellite phone, watching as she dialed a number from memory. "Who are you calling?" Sarah asked. "Help," Emma replied simply, then spoke into the phone. "The stars are falling. David's lighthouse needs protection." She recited their exact coordinates, then added, 20 minutes. She ended the call and returned the phone to Thomas. "Now we wait." "Emma, who did you just call?" Thomas pressed. "Daddy's friends," she said. "The ones who've been watching over us since he died." Sarah stared at her daughter. "What friends?" "David didn't have. The ones he worked with before Parker Technologies," Emma explained patiently. "The ones in the government who wanted Cassandra for good things, not bad things." Thomas's mind raced. David worked for the government. Intelligence community? Emma nodded. He had a special team. They've been protecting me from far away, waiting for the right time. Outside, Jenkins's voice rang out again. "Parker, you have 1 minute before we come in shooting." Thomas made a decision. "We surrender," he called back. "But only to you, Jenkins, face to face." There was a pause, then, "Come out with your hands up, all of you." Thomas knelt before Emma. "Whatever happens next, follow my lead. If these friends of your father's are really coming, we just need to stall until they arrive." They emerged from the ranger station with hands raised. First Thomas, then Sarah with Emma, all blinking in the harsh sunlight. Robert was forced to his knees nearby, bloodied but alive, surrounded by armed operatives. Jenkins approached with the confident stride of a man who believed he'd won. At 55, his silver hair and tailored tactical gear gave him the appearance of a corporate executive playing soldier. "Thomas Parker," he said with false cordiality. "This could have been so much easier. The board is already mine. All I needed was Cassandra's final algorithm, which you've now delivered to me." He gestured to the laptop under Thomas's arm. "You won't get away with this, Jenkins. Too many people know what you're doing." Jenkins laughed. "Who? Your loyal head of security?" He nodded toward Robert. "The waitress and her freakish child. No one who matters knows anything." "You killed David Chen," Thomas stated flatly. "Emma's father, my friend." "A regrettable necessity," Jenkins shrugged. He developed cold feet about the military applications, started talking about ethical AI and other nonsense. Then he discovered his daughter's unusual abilities and became a genuine threat. "So you arranged his accident," Sarah said, her voice shaking with rage. Jenkins's cold eyes flickered to her. Black River handled that operation. Very clean, just like they'll handle this one. He turned back to Thomas. "Now, hand over the laptop and the girl. You and Ms. Wilson can disappear quietly to a private Black River facility, or you can die here. Your choice." Thomas glanced at his watch. If Emma's mysterious call had worked, help would arrive in minutes. They needed to stall. "Before I give you anything," Thomas said, "tell me, how did you know about Emma's abilities?" Jenkins smiled thinly. "We've been monitoring her since birth. David's research into cognitive prediction was promising, but when our surveillance detected anomalous brainwave patterns in his infant daughter, we realized we had something far more valuable than theoretical models." "You've been watching my baby her entire life?" Sarah's horror was palpable. "With great interest," Jenkins confirmed, "especially after her abilities began manifesting." "Did you really think those doctors who dismissed her intuition were acting independently? We needed her abilities kept quiet, developing naturally." Emma stepped forward suddenly, her small face composed. "You won't win," she said simply. Jenkins crouched to her level, his smile almost genuine. "Extraordinary," he murmured. "You truly understand what's happening, don't you? Far beyond your years." He reached out as if to touch her face. "Don't," Thomas warned, stepping between them. Jenkins stood, his patience visibly thinning. "Enough. The laptop. Now." Thomas held it out, and Jenkins snatched it triumphantly. "The access codes." "There's only one that matters," Thomas replied. "Hope is the thing with feathers." Jenkins' eyes widened in recognition. "David's line. Of course." He opened the laptop and began typing, his back partially turned to them as he focused on claiming his prize. That's when they heard it, the distinctive sound of military helicopters approaching from the east, different from Black River's civilian models. Emma smiled. "Right on time," she whispered. The Black River operatives tensed as 3 military helicopters appeared over the tree line, weapon systems clearly visible beneath their hulls. Jenkins's face contorted with rage as he realized what was happening. "How?" he demanded, rounding on Thomas. "Not me." Thomas nodded toward Emma. "Her." The lead helicopter touched down at the edge of the clearing, and heavily armed personnel in unmarked tactical gear deployed, taking defensive positions. Their commander approached, a stern-faced woman in her 50s, whose authority was evident in every measured step. "Jenkins," she called, her voice carrying effortlessly across the clearing. "Stand down. You're surrounded." "Director Wallace?" Jenkins spat the name like a curse. "This is a private security operation. You have no jurisdiction here." "This ceased being private when you targeted a child under federal protection," Wallace replied coolly. "Sarah and Emma Wilson have been under our watch since David Chen's death." Sarah looked stunned. "What is she talking about? Who are these people?" Emma squeezed her mother's hand. "Daddy's friends, the good ones." Thomas was piecing it together. "David wasn't just working on predictive algorithms for my company. He was developing them for intelligence purposes, too." "Project Oracle," Wallace confirmed, approaching closer. "Chen was developing non-weaponized predictive systems to prevent terrorism and natural disasters. When he discovered his daughter had natural abilities that paralleled his theoretical models, he reached out to us for protection." "Then why didn't you prevent his death?" Sarah demanded. "We tried," Wallace said, genuine regret in her voice. "Black River moved faster than we anticipated. By the time we secured you and Emma, David was gone." She turned cold eyes to Jenkins. "A mistake we've been waiting to correct." Jenkins looked frantically between his mercenaries and the federal agents. "My men outnumber yours," he threatened. "Your men are hired guns," Wallace countered. "Mine are patriots with air support and federal backing. Choose your next move carefully." For a tense moment, it seemed Jenkins might order his forces to fight. Then, with cold calculation, he changed tactics, holding up Thomas's laptop. "I still have Cassandra," he announced, "and I've already activated David's backdoor protocol. The system is mine." Thomas smiled for the first time in days. "Actually, you've just triggered its self-destruct sequence. David designed it to recognize unauthorized users, even with the correct passphrase." As if on cue, the laptop emitted a high-pitched whine. Jenkins dropped it instinctively, watching in horror as the screen displayed a rapidly decreasing countdown. "It's wiping itself," Thomas explained. "Every instance of Cassandra, across all servers, is being systematically deleted, replaced with randomized code that makes reconstruction impossible." "You fool!" Jenkins raged. "Do you have any idea what you've destroyed? What we could have accomplished?" "I know exactly what you wanted to accomplish," Thomas replied evenly. "A predictive weapon that could identify targets before they became threats. Thought crime prevention on a global scale." "We would have saved countless lives," Jenkins insisted. "By sacrificing liberty and due process," Thomas countered, "and by exploiting a child's natural abilities to enhance your system." Wallace signaled her team forward. "Marvin Jenkins, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and the murder of David Chen." As federal agents moved to secure Jenkins and disarm the Black River operatives, Robert was released from his captors. He limped to Thomas's side, battered but relieved. "Did you know this would happen?" he asked quietly. "Not until Emma made that call," Thomas admitted. "I still don't understand how she knew to contact them or how she knew the authentication phrase." Emma, overhearing, smiled up at him. "Daddy showed me, in my dreams." Wallace approached them as Jenkins was led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of thwarted rage. "We have a lot to discuss," she said, "about Emma's future and about your role in all this, Mr. Parker." "My role?" Thomas questioned. "David Chen left specific instructions in the event of this scenario. He wanted you involved in Emma's life, as her protector and guide." Wallace's expression softened slightly. "Despite your falling out, he never stopped considering you his friend. He believed you would make the right choice when the time came." Sarah looked uncertain. What exactly are you suggesting, Director? Emma has extraordinary abilities that will only grow stronger as she matures. She needs protection, education, and guidance from people who understand both the technological and human aspects of her gift. You want to take her into some government program? Sarah concluded, her arm tightening around her daughter. No, Wallace shook her head. We want to create a special arrangement with you, Mr. Parker, and our agency working together to ensure Emma develops her abilities safely and ethically. As they discussed the possibilities, Emma wandered a few steps away, gazing up at the sky with a serene expression. Thomas followed, crouching beside her. You knew all of this would happen, he said softly. From the very beginning. Emma looked at him, her blue eyes ancient and innocent simultaneously. Not everything. The pictures change when people make choices. But I saw you in the restaurant. I saw us here. And I saw what comes next. What does come next, Emma? She smiled, a genuine 8-year-old smile that momentarily eclipsed the weight of her extraordinary abilities. Something good, something important. She took his hand. Daddy was right about you. As they returned to the others, Thomas felt a profound sense that his life had irrevocably changed, not just because of the danger they'd faced or the technology they'd lost, but because of the remarkable child who had saved him in more ways than one. The future suddenly seemed both less predictable and more hopeful than it had in years. 3 months later, the autumn leaves painted the Berkshire Mountains in brilliant hues of red and gold. Thomas stood on the deck of his newly constructed lakeside home, watching Emma skip stones across the water's surface. Each stone bounced precisely 5 times before sinking, her control growing more impressive daily. Sarah emerged from the house carrying a tray of coffee and hot chocolate. She's been at it for an hour, she said, nodding toward her daughter. Says she's calibrating. Thomas smiled. Director Wallace's term for when Emma practices focusing her abilities. They had settled into an unexpected but harmonious arrangement after the confrontation with Black River. Thomas had rebuilt his company with a new focus on ethical AI development, while Sarah had accepted a position as a linguistic specialist with Wallace's agency, officially designated Project Oracle. Emma attended a specialized educational program 3 days a week, where scientists respectfully studied her abilities while teachers nurtured her remarkable intellect. The rest of her time was spent here, at the lake house Thomas had built to accommodate all 3 of them. Separate wings for privacy, shared spaces for collaboration and friendship. The board approved the Chen Foundation funding this morning, Thomas said, accepting the coffee Sarah offered. 20 million annually for researching non-military applications of predictive algorithms. David would have been pleased, Sarah replied softly. Their relationship had evolved from mutual suspicion to genuine friendship, bound by their shared commitment to Emma's well-being and the legacy of the man who had connected their lives. Emma abandoned her stone skipping and ran toward them, cheeks flushed with excitement. Aunt Valerie is coming early, she announced. Her flight got changed. Thomas checked his watch. Her flight isn't for 4 hours. It got changed, Emma repeated with absolute certainty. She'll be here in 30 minutes. Sarah and Thomas exchanged knowing glances. Emma's announcements were never questioned now, merely accommodated. Right on cue, Thomas's phone rang. It was Wallace, informing him that indeed her flight had been rescheduled due to weather concerns. After the call, Thomas joined Emma at the railing. Are you excited about starting the new project tomorrow? Emma nodded enthusiastically. The project was her idea, using her abilities to help predict natural disasters, giving communities crucial extra hours or days to prepare. Wallace's agency had created a special task force around the concept, with Emma as its centerpiece. I saw an earthquake, she said matter-of-factly, in Indonesia, still 3 days away. We can help them get ready. Thomas marveled at how she balanced the weight of such knowledge with the simple joys of childhood. one moment discussing disaster prediction, the next begging for ice cream or cartoons. "Emma," he began carefully, "I've been meaning to ask you something. That day in the restaurant when you first warned me. Did you see everything that would happen afterward? Did you know we'd all end up here like this?" She considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Not exactly. I saw pieces, like a puzzle. I saw you and Mom becoming friends. I saw us by this lake." She glanced up at him. "And I saw Daddy smiling." And Thomas felt a familiar tightness in his chest at the mention of David. "I wish I could have made amends with him while he was alive." "You did," Emma said simply, "by saving me, by choosing the right thing when it was hard." She took his hand. "He forgave you a long time ago. That's why he made sure we would find each other." From inside the house came the sound of Sarah's phone ringing, Wallace again, with updates about tomorrow's project launch. As Sarah took the call, Emma turned to Thomas with sudden seriousness. "There's something I haven't told you," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "about Cassandra." Thomas knelt to her level, instantly alert. "What is it?" "It's not all gone," Emma confided. "Daddy hid the most important parts somewhere safe. He called it the seed." "Where?" Thomas asked, mind racing with implications. Emma tapped her temple. "Here, in my memories. He knew someday I'd be ready to rebuild it the right way, with your help." Thomas stared at her, understanding the magnitude of what she was sharing. David hadn't destroyed his life's work. He'd entrusted it to his daughter, to be reconstructed when the time was right, when the proper ethical frameworks could be established. "Why tell me this now?" he asked. "Because tomorrow we start helping people," Emma explained. "And soon we'll need more than just my abilities to do it right." The implications were staggering. Emma's natural abilities combined with a carefully reconstructed Cassandra could revolutionize disaster response, disease control, environmental protection, all the beneficial applications David had originally envisioned. "This stays between us for now," Thomas said quietly, "until we're absolutely certain it can be done safely." Emma nodded solemnly, then suddenly transformed back into a typical 8-year-old. "Can we have pizza tonight? With extra cheese?" Thomas laughed, the tension breaking. "I think that can be arranged." As they headed inside to prepare for Wallace's arrival, Thomas glanced back at the lake, its surface now perfectly still, reflecting the mountains and sky in perfect symmetry. The future remained as unpredictable as ever for most of humanity. But with Emma's gift and David's legacy, perhaps they could bring a measure of foresight to a world that desperately needed it. Emma paused in the doorway, looking back at him with that knowing smile that still occasionally unnerved him. "It's going to be okay," she said. "Better than okay." And Thomas, who had built a fortune on calculating probabilities and predicting outcomes, found himself believing absolutely in the certainty of an 8-year-old girl who had irrevocably changed his life with 6 simple words in a Boston restaurant. "Sir, please, you need to leave now."